Well, I want to go ahead and welcome y'all. I appreciate y'all being here. I know we have some people out in the lobby visiting, so y'all quit visiting and come on in. So we're gonna get started here in just a minute. So if you're here with us and you're a guest, we're so thankful that you came tonight. I'm Eric Eastep. I'm the pastor here, and really privileged to be able to have Ronny Simon, who's going to be sharing with us this evening about Israel. And so I'm excited because this is going to be new material that Ronny's going to be covering with us, but I think it's going to be very informational and informative for you. But I'll just do a couple things real quick just to give you an announcement. Ronny's wife, Tally, is in the lobby, and she has a table set up. Ronny's written a number of books, and if you're interested in finding out just some more information about Israel, some of the Old Testament kings and those things, great books. I've read all the books that he has out there. And so whenever this is over this evening, you can go out there and purchase a book. We're going to be doing this again tomorrow night at 6:30. People have asked me, is he doing the same talk again? And I said, no, he's got two speeches. So he's doing the first one tonight, and he's doing a different one tomorrow night. And so you're going to want to attend that as well. So I'm just going to open us up in a word of prayer. And Ronny has a lot to say. And so it's like drinking out of a fire hose. So y'all just buckle up and get ready. So he's going to hop right in. So I don't want to waste any of his time. So I'm going to lead us in a word of prayer, and then Ronny's going to share with us. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are grateful and we are thankful for this evening. God, we are grateful that we have the opportunity to come together to fellowship, but Lord, also to learn more about what's happening in the world, but Lord, about your special place, your special people. And so, Jesus, we are thankful that we can gather together to learn, but God, also to be prayerful. And we look forward, Lord, to what you're going to do in our hearts tonight. And I pray these things in Jesus' name, amen. Now, if you look at your watch right now, it is 6:31, so I've wasted 1 minute of time. So 8 o'clock is going to be the time when we are going to be wrapping up. So hang in there, buckle up for an hour and a half. You're going to have an opportunity. We'll take some time near the end for you to be able to ask some questions. So 6:31 right now. So hang on and get ready to learn. Ronny, thank you very much. Wherever you are, there he is.
Well, good evening. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you, Pastor Eric, for the opportunity to be here and share Israel and the Middle East with, I believe, friends of Israel. Some of you look at me in a strange way. It's English with a funny accent, okay? And that's not going to change. So please get used to my English. I'll try to slow down. I keep making that promise. I never keep it. There's so much to cover. We want to speed up to cover everything. We're going to speak about a topic which is quite a loaded one. I'm glad that you're out because it shows that you're interested. The worst thing that can happen is that nobody's interested, and that's part of what we are facing. Everybody relies on a narrative. Everybody knows something because he watches TV. It creates a certain tone, a certain understanding. Let me submit to you, you've been lied to by the media when they speak about the Middle East. You've been lied to by many people that come from the academic world when they speak about Israel, the way the country looks like, the way it conducts its affairs. And I have a mission tonight, and together we are going to cover that. I do have 3 requests from you. Number 1, you do not believe a word that I'm saying. Everything that I'm saying is questionable. You need to go and check. You need to doubt. There's so much deception out there. I don't want to add to that. And therefore, some things will come to you as amazing, shocking news. Don't just believe what you hear. You go and check. You order to yourselves. Because most people don't do the study, and it creates a certain tone which leads everybody astray, not really knowing what's going on. So question everything and get your own education. And since we live in a world of narratives, a narrative by definition, it's not the truth. A narrative, it's not the facts. A narrative is a story made up for you that has some truth in it, a lot of folklore, a lot of fake information. It serves a certain agenda. And since I'm old school, I want to speak about the facts. And for that reason, when I share an opinion with you, I'll tell you it's an opinion. If I didn't say opinion, and you see quite a lot of information comes up and down the screens, these are documents that I will give you time to read because they're important, to try to understand what happens in the Middle East. We'll speak about the sources of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We do that chronologically. There is a lot to cover. And here is a challenge for you, and let's just dive in because the time is short. Here is homework for you for tomorrow. I'm going to check homeworks tomorrow. You go and you check any way that you want. Go Google, whatever. And you give me one Israeli leader, a prominent one, that wrote a book or wrote an essay or gave an interview, and the message was, we are going to destroy the Palestinians, or Israel is interested to occupy the whole land. The Palestinians are the bitter enemy. We are going to annihilate them. Go ahead. You won't find anything like that. I can give you 1,000 examples of Palestinian leaders that the message is, we are going to destroy the Jews. We're going to kill them. That's our main objective. They say it loud and clear in every possible platform, in every language. And I'm saying that because the accusations of genocide are brought against the state of Israel. Well, genocide, you have to have an intent for genocide. Israel does not have an agenda, no party, no university professor, no Israeli prime minister to utterly destroy the Palestinians. You won't find it. Another challenge for you is you try to find out, ever since Israel was born as a nation, when was the one time that Israel was the aggressor? When Israel initiated war against our neighbors? You give me one such example, and I rest my case. Israel retaliates. Israel never initiated a war in the area. Not against the Arab countries, not against the Palestinians. Please go and check. Information is out there, easy to check, easy to confirm, important to know. Because today the whole world is accusing Israel to be the aggressor, the colonizer, an apartheid state, and we take it as a given without even checking those terms that the world is using. Well, I challenge you, you go and check, you owe it to yourselves as intelligent human beings. So these are the two quests that I have from you for tomorrow, is to try to find an Israeli prominent leader that speaks about death to the Palestinians, and you show me when Israel initiated the war in the area. So this will be something that I'm going to speak about as we go chronologically from one era to the other. Not a pleasant message to hear sometimes. The facts are important. And let me start like zooming in with an observation that was made by a man who was not a friend of Israel. This was the Secretary of State, so to speak, of the British Empire in February 18 of 1947. That was the impression of Great Britain, who was to a large extent responsible to the situation. That's how they saw the conflict in the area. And read it carefully because that's the bottom line. He really nailed it. And what he says basically is that the Jews want to have a nation and the Arabs don't want to have a nation. They want to destroy the Jewish project. And there was a difference, as you understand, between the two observations. Okay? So we're going to start, we try to explain some of the core issues in the conflict that nobody speaks about because it's not PC and it's very unpleasant. I don't care about being PC. I want to bring you the story as it is, and I hope that you'll appreciate the information. And as I said, don't trust a word. You go and check for yourselves. Here is a very important principle in Islam, and I'm not being anti-Muslim, all right? I'm not a theologian. If you live in a Muslim country and you're not a Muslim yourself, you have the title dhimmi, if you're a Christian or Jewish. A dhimmi, by definition, is a second-class citizen, a slave to the Muslims, somebody to be despised, somebody to be discriminated, somebody that doesn't enjoy any rights, but we Muslims are kind enough to let him live because he believes in one God. So Jews and Christians will be considered dhimmis when you live in a Muslim country. Now think about what may happen if they're accustomed to that situation and suddenly Christians and Jews are coming as conquerors. They come as masters. They come as very progressive people that are innovating and building, and suddenly a Muslim has to work for a Jew. That's unacceptable in the mindset of Islam. By the way, the dhimmi position still prevails today in countries like Yemen and Saudi Arabia. That's how Islam sees the world. If you are a non-Muslim who lives in a Muslim country, you are a dhimmi. And more so, you pay a tax, quite humiliating, jizya. You are thanking the Muslim masters for protecting your life. Once you understand that, and you understand that Islam is being humiliated by the West for more than a century, you begin to understand the core of the issue. A dhimmi mindset will never accept the fact that Jews will be sovereign in a Muslim territory as they believe that is Palestine. The Muslim world will never accept the existence of a Jewish state. Now think about the Jewish army beating up the Muslim armies time after time after time. You do understand the problem. Islam is not teaching humiliation. Islam is teaching victory. Effectively, ever since the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1918, Islam is being humiliated, defeated by Christian powers, and now by the Jewish state as well. You have to understand the level of humiliation here that the Muslim world is feeling towards the Jewish entity. The Muslim world will never accept the existence of a Jewish state in Palestine. That's a given. So where do we go from here? Because we thought for many years that the issue is a political one. We thought that we can resolve everything because it's common sense, and common sense will prevail. We'll divide the land, we'll find a solution. Well, two parties are fighting for one land. One party says we are willing to compromise, that's Israel, time after time, and the other party says we're going to kill you. Read the charter of Hamas. I'm not exaggerating. So as long as the focus was on politics, we're going to sit down to the table, we'll find a solution, we'll divide the land. It's good for everybody, right? Well, if you're using a Western common sense, it's good for everybody. But let me submit to you, in the Middle East, people don't think in common sense. It's not about let's reason. It's about fanatic religious sentiments, sometimes from the Jewish side as well. And once you speak about religion, there is no room for any negotiations. Religion brings it to a dead end. Because your God did not authorize you to make concessions in his behalf, so what are we going to negotiate about when it comes to the land the two parties want somehow to share or to live in? So once we understand those basic observations about how the Muslim world sees the rest of the religions, we can start with some history with your permission. Well, we need to set the scene to understand. I'm zooming out for a few minutes to give you the bigger picture, but we have to do that. Otherwise, it's hard to understand the story of Palestine. Here's a map of the Ottoman Empire in the 19th century, give or take. You see Palestine, the arrow over there, but you don't see the name on the map. I'll prove to you that the name Palestine was not used. Through 400 years of Ottoman domination over the Middle East, the name Palestine was not used. You know how the Crusaders used to call the Holy Land? Not Palestine, Outre-mer, behind the sea. So who called this piece of property Palestine? The name was almost never used. Jews called it the land of Israel. Christians called it the Holy Land. So Palestine is a name which is very fluid, very hard to understand. It never had any clear political borders until 1923. I'll prove that to you. So I added Palestine to the map so you will know. Where are we in the Ottoman Empire? The 19th century was basically typified by two main things. Ottoman Empire is getting weaker and weaker. 6 major wars against Russia. Russia's ambition is to push south to the Mediterranean Sea. They need hot water harbors. That's why Putin conquered the Crimea Peninsula in 1214. Until today, 2014, few things don't change. And the Ottoman Empire is there to stop Russia from its expansion, and the Ottomans are supported by the rest of Europe, all Christian superpowers. Britain and France and Spain and Austro-Hungary, everybody is supporting Turkey to stop the Russians. Turkey was so exhausted, they were simply completely drained with manpower, with money. The Ottoman Empire needs resources, and they decided one possible resource is offering land in Palestine to anybody who is willing to buy it. What is so special about land in Palestine? Well, it's a holy land. For the first time in centuries, Christians are invited to invest in Palestine. By the way, by Sharia law, if you're a devout Muslim and you sell your land to a non-Muslim, you're facing death penalty. All right? Anywhere a Muslim buys property and sells his land to a non-Muslim, that will be the idea behind Sharia law. Once a Muslim land, always a Muslim land, not to be sold to non-Muslim. But the Ottomans needed the money, and therefore they make that compromise. The Sultan, Abdul Hamid II, decides to rewrite or make a reform about the land in the Ottoman Empire, Palestine included. If a land was not found for 3 years, it was confiscated by the crown, offered to anybody who wanted to purchase it. And who are the potential buyers? Well, potential buyers will be Christian superpowers. You want to increase your influence in Ottoman territory, you do that by using the religious factor. But it was all politics and not just religion. And the Ottomans are willing to sell. Think about the Jews, an opportunity. For nearly 2,000 years, Jews are praying and longing to go back to Israel. It was an impossibility. Now the Ottomans are willing to sell. It's an opportunity. And therefore, one of the main reasons that brought Palestine back to the world stable was the poor condition of the Ottoman Empire. At the same time, something else happened. In 1869, the Suez Canal was opened. Some of you may have heard about the Suez Canal, and here is some of the information. It was a water artery that was dug within 10 years. Ferdinand de Lesseps was the French engineer behind the project, and you do see the value of it. If you are going from Britain all the way to India, the largest province of the British Empire, you need to go around the continent of Africa, the Cape of Good Hope. If you go through the canal, you cut the journey 4,000 miles shorter. That's a big advantage. Suddenly, the Suez Canal becomes to be the focal point of all the European diplomacy from the year it was opened. And the Suez Canal is close to Palestine. How interesting if you see a little bit of data about the canal. So Palestine becomes now an asset because if you want to protect the canal, you need to have a no man's land big enough to protect it, the whole of the Sinai Peninsula. And Great Britain, that will purchase the shares of the canal, is interested to protect their investment. They send the army into Egypt. Egypt is conquered in 1882, and now they look at Palestine because Palestine will be the gatekeeper of the Suez Canal. So in a very short time, Palestine becomes to be a point of attraction. Number one, the Ottomans are willing to sell land in Palestine. Everybody's interested. Number two, the Suez Canal, a strategic asset. Palestine becomes to be now the stage, if you wish, to all the controversy among European superpowers. Palestine will be now the focal point. So these are the two reasons why I started with these two, the law that registers the land, which means offering it to anybody, and of course the Suez Canal as well. Here's a map of Palestine. It's taken from Turkish documents, and you do see the same map. Please point at the place that says Palestine on that map. Do you see the name over there? It's not. So what is this famous Palestine that everyone speaks about? And who are the people, those Palestinians, that were the indigenous people of the land? Who used the name? Well, nobody. Because the Ottoman Empire was divided to Sanjaks, which is a district. There was the district of Beirut, and of Damascus, and of Jerusalem. There was no place called Palestine. Okay? This is important. So therefore, there's no place called Palestine, are the people called Palestinians. You had Arabs that lived in the Ottoman Empire. They were not given any name that indicates a nationality. They did not have a nationality. The concept of nations did not arrive to the Middle East yet. It will take some time. So when we're going to ask questions about what is Palestine, for example, here's the land. Most of the Arab population dwells on the mountains. The coasts, the valleys are covered by swamps and marshes. Palestine is very scarcely populated. Let me ask you this. If an Egyptian businessman wants to buy some land along the coast over there, will that create a problem? Most likely not. You want to invest? By all means. Maybe we'll enjoy the investment because you are Egyptian Muslim. If a Christian wants to buy land along the coast, will that present a problem? Well, to some extent, yes, because they're not Muslim. What about Jewish? If the Ottomans are inviting Jewish money into Palestine, and Jews are willing to pay a fortune to buy a wasteland, is that a problem? Yes, it's a major problem, because the Jews are coming back home. We will not allow that. We'll tolerate Christian presence. Muslims are welcome. If the Jews want to come back home, we will not allow that. Because they will not come as masters, not as people that own property. A Muslim is not working for a Jew, period. It's defeating the whole purpose of Islam. But let me ask you, it's just an honest transaction. Somebody wants to sell, somebody wants to buy. What's the problem? Nobody loses its land, nobody loses a job. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that the Muslim mindset will never accept, not even back then, the existence of Jewish communities, let alone a Jewish state. We speak about envy, among other things. These European Jews bring with them the modern era to Palestine, and that was not the case. So we speak about a lot of issues between the people. Let's speak about the land for just a minute. I'll let you read some information. 19th century, we have about 3,000 books and journals and diaries written by people that came to visit Palestine. Maybe the most famous one is Mark Twain. Good old Samuel Clement came in 1867 and wrote a book about his journey. It's called Innocents Abroad. You can find it in bookstores, in Amazon, even today. They all give the same report. All of them give the same report. Take a minute and read what was Palestine like in the 19th century. I think that you begin to understand what was the land all about. Almost no people. The land was totally devastated. You can walk hours or days without seeing a living soul. So where are those people called the Palestinians, this nation that used to live on the land, those indigenous people who are there from time immemorial? Well, according to all the visitors of the 19th century, they were not there. So how do we to understand that? Well, that's why I said I do want to show you the facts, show you documents that other people wrote. And these were not pro-Israelis, there was no Israel, not pro-Jews, an objective description how the land used to look like not that long ago. Let's speak about the population. Who are the people who lived in Palestine in the days of the Ottoman Empire? We speak about multiple nationalities, religions, maybe races, Jews and Arabs. Can you tell who is who? Of course you cannot, because many of the local Jews look like the local Arabs. We speak about people that live in the Middle East, different religion, but the same way of life. And the question is, who are the people who lived in Palestine? Well, here is one of the evidences that we have from historians. You do understand. You just bought a lot of land from the Ottoman Empire. You were hoping it's going to give you some money. Nobody is there to farm the land. So you're going to bring people over from Afghanistan and Morocco to farm the land that you bought. And since they don't have enough money, you give them a money loan, they buy seeds from you, and if the season is not good, they have to pack up the things and run for their lives. They cannot pay the money back. Did you know that Palestine, for 2 centuries, population wasn't growing? It's not normal. It wasn't growing because people could not live in the land because of the poor conditions. Raids of nomadic tribes, Bedouins, coming through the land, robbing the little that the locals had. You just came from Morocco and you were hoping to make some good money here. You're not. You're going back home. Population wasn't growing. And therefore, Palestine basically was filled with workers brought by the local landlords just to farm the land. They stayed for a season. They went back home. The country was in no condition to sustain its population. The Jewish population, not that many. They make a minority. The majority will be indeed Arabs in those years, but you do see how the numbers begin to grow. Jews always dreamt about returning to Palestine. There was always a Jewish presence in Palestine, and now there's an opportunity. The Ottomans are willing to sell. So the Jewish population grows, but who were those first pioneers that came over? Well, most of them were basically refugees, people who fled from the Tsar in Russia. They fled persecution. They fled massacres in Yemen. Wealthy Jewish family, the Rothschilds, maybe the most famous ones, bought land from the Ottomans and sent people over just to save their lives. The world says the Jews came as colonizers. Really, who sent the Jews over there to colonize the land? We speak about people that did not come to exploit the land or others. People came to save their lives. Land that was purchased not by sending people away, not even once. So the Jewish first pioneers came basically as refugees and not that much as colonizers, as you understand. That would be the main motivation why Jews started coming back to Palestine. That was the beginning of it. I cannot even call them Zionists, not yet, because the term Zionism will be born about 20 years later, but it's important to understand how it all started. What about the Arabs in Palestine? Well, the Ottomans had one census in 1880, which was somewhat reliable, And the number of people in the country is 125,000. Those figures are important. 25% are Jewish. They also counted nomadic tribes that happen to be in the land for a season, but that will be the figure, give or take. 20 years later, lo and behold, the population is rising to 500,000. I just told you that for 200 years, the population wasn't growing. What happened between 1880 to 1900s? One thing, Jews came, brought money with them, developing the land, creating opportunities. Rumors spread around the Middle East, there are opportunities in Palestine, let's go. The Jews are paying decent salaries, they build nice clinics, we'll be much better off than stay home in Afghanistan. We're going to take the journey, we're going to go to Palestine, times of prosperity. That's why the population grew in Palestine. When you read documents that speak against the Israeli or Jewish agenda, they will tell you it was just a new time. People felt more optimistic. They had more babies because life was good. No, these were immigrants. These were people that infiltrated illegally because Jewish money created opportunities. And all these that were not from the area are considered today to be the indigenous people of Palestine. These are the Palestinian people. If you ask them back then, are you Palestinian? They never heard the term. The term wasn't even born until 1988, by the way. I'll prove that to you tomorrow. So once we understand the demographics, and we understand how things have changed as a result of Jewish money coming in, you begin to understand what will be the nature of the problem. You're going to work in a Jewish farm, that's a problem with Islam. You're not supposed to work for Jews. But now you have a family to feed, and the Jews offer all the prosperity. Think about the envy, think about the religious factor here. These were the reasons that started changing everything in the area. I do want to show you this observation of an historian, because the Ottomans enjoyed the money coming in, not that much the people. So money was invested, especially for more Jews to come. The Ottomans started limiting the numbers of Jews coming because the locals were not happy to see Jews coming, but money kept flowing. So that will be a very good observation of what were the last years of the Ottoman Empire with the new prosperity and the new money. When the British Empire is going to take over, here is a handbook that was written specially for the British personnel, which is going to create the mandate. We'll get to that in about 25 minutes. Look at the observation about Palestine, about Arabs. Now this is important. Not Arabs, Arabic speaking is a major difference, all right? So most people that lived in Palestine until the First World War cannot be even called Arabs. They came from different countries, all spoke Arabic, but it doesn't mean that they're Arabs or Muslims, they could be Christians as well. Now, these things that look like kind of nuance, not important, these are critical to understand the conflict that we are facing now. That's how it started. Because everybody that came into Palestine will be considered as part of the indigenous Palestinian people. I'll tell you once again, if you check with them, are you Palestinian? The term wasn't even born. We need to understand something else, because you hear people that speak against Israel quite a lot, that before the Zionist movement was born and Jews came back to Palestine, we lived together with the Jews like brothers. In perfect harmony, life was good, there were no issues. What created a problem is the Zionist organization and movement. Well, I'll beg a difference, and let me give you some examples. And once again, I'm asking you to try to read what you see in front of you about the great relationship of Muslims and Jews in the land of Palestine. These are visitors, observers, that didn't understand what was going on. Try to read with this one. I hope that you're reading fast enough. But you get the idea, right? We speak about the Hebron massacre in 1929. You give me one example. The Jews attacked Arabs in Palestine. You won't find it. It was always the local Arabs attacking the Jews. Envy for the property, angry for their success. That was the story. I'm standing before you to tell you, you go and check. All right? And you prove me wrong when it comes to this. And here's another one, the last one, promise. There's so many. I just had to cherry pick and to decide what to include. There are tons and tons of information. So that was a friendly relationship between Jews and Arabs in Palestine, even before the Zionist movement was born. To show you a short video, it will be in English captions, so please forget about noise in the background and try to listen to what this lady is saying.
92 سنة 92 حضرت الإنجليز وحضرت ذبحت اليهود في الخليل ذبحت اليهود ذبحوه أهل الخليل وأبي والله ذبح وجاب أواعي من عندهم
والدتي؟
أنا خليلية من دار جابر.
اسمي
سارة محمد عواد جابر.
متى كم عمرك؟ كم مضى من عمرك؟
92 سنة.
92 سنة.
92.
Well, I guess that you understood how much pride she takes that her father massacred the Jews in Hebron. That was the great relationship between the people in Hebron. 1897, a new turning point. A Jewish man by the name of Theodor Herzl, a man that was born in Budapest, Hungary, 1860, and was working for a newspaper in Vienna, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, is sent by his newspaper to Paris, France, to cover the trial of a Jewish army officer, Alfred Dreyfus. Year was 1894. Dreyfus is accused for treason. He sold secrets to the Germans, false accusation, doesn't really matter. But the wave of anti-Semitism that spread through France shocked Mr. Herzl, because by then, the years of the Enlightenment, years of emancipation, Western European Jews were equal in society, and suddenly this. And Herzl made some thinking and came to the conclusion, we will never be accepted by the European countries. The Ottomans are willing to sell land in Palestine. It's an opportunity for us to get together, go back to the homeland, and build a nation once again. And he got Jewish leaders together. I'm running this one through with your permission. And on the 28th of August, 1897, the first Jewish conference got together in the city of Basel in Switzerland, and they founded the Zionist movement. Now, most people are using the term Zionist in a very negative way today, which is a question why. Because Zionism has a very simple definition, basically. It's a Jewish, secular, national movement that aspires to bring the Jews back home to build a nation. It's not against anybody. It's not for stealing land from anybody. Read Herzl's book. He speaks about coexistence and cooperation. So far it was individuals that purchased land in Israel. Now it's becoming a national movement. And ever since 1897, the Jewish nation is represented by the Zionist movement. So this was a turning point that leads us to another turning point, WW1. We made some progress. We covered about 60 years in what? About 25 minutes. Not bad, huh? Well, I promised to give you a break in about 10 minutes. Can you hold on 10 minutes? And we'll see what happens. Well, here's the story of the war. You don't know the story because you went to school in this country. Everybody speaks about the First World War, but they don't tell you the true motivation or the outcomes of the war. It wasn't that Germany and the Ottomans in Austro-Hungary were defeated. The Ottoman Empire, the Muslim Empire, was defeated by Christians. When they teach the outcomes of the First World War, is Christianity humiliated Islam. Do you understand the difference between the two? Islam is seeking revenge. Islam is seeking payback time. That's the world's condition vis-a-vis the West. By the way, from the days of the Ottoman Empire's collapse, Islam had 2 days of victory. That's it. 9/11 and October 7, 2023. That's it. The rest of it, it's one defeat after the other. And you have to understand this mindset. Not defeated by America, not by Israel, by Jews and Christians. That's humiliating. Look at Iran today. What's the problem of Iran with Israel? Anybody can give an idea? Why Iran is so hateful toward the Jewish state? We don't share a border. We never went to war against each other. They cannot say that they show solidarity with the Arab brothers. They are Farsis, not Arabs. What's the problem of Iran? You know the answer in one word: Islam. The Muslim world will never accept the existence of a Jewish state in the very heartland of what they believe is Muslim territory. That's it. Once you understand that, it gives you a whole new perspective to understand the nature of the conflict. The war goes on. Great Britain has a lot of casualties on French soil. Britain is looking for a way out, to try to go into the Ottoman territory and to try to force Germany to send more troops to help Turkey, and then they can go through the lines in France. Lots of politics, not important. Britain needs allies. And for that reason, the governor of Egypt, a man by the name of Henry McMahon, starts talking to the Arab leader in the area called the Sharif Hussein of Mecca. Sharif is a title of an Arab ruler that has in his custody the two holy places to Islam, Mecca and Medina. If you are the ruler of Mecca and Medina, your title will be a Sharif. And the British made a proposition to the Arab gentlemen. If you help us during the war, after the war is over, we're going to make you king of the Arabs. How much land do you have in mind? And the Sharif said, not much. I believe that should be my kingdom after the war is over. So they make an agreement that was never signed, just an understanding, that when the war is over and the Ottoman Empire collapses, Great Britain will make Hussein the king of the whole area, two exceptions. The naval base of Aden, when the Houthis are strong today, by the way, and Palestine will be excluded. For the British mindset, after 400 years of Muslim domination in the holy places to Christianity, to win Jerusalem and hand it back to the Muslims was way too much. And therefore, that's the understanding. An agreement is not signed, it's an understanding. At the same time, we speak about other leaders that tried to make also an agreement. I'm going through this slide with your permission, Britain and France. Britain and France are going to divide the Ottoman Empire after the war is over. It was a secret treaty called the Sykes-Picot Treaty, the two negotiators, Mark Sykes and Roger Picot, not knowing that the land that they are going to divide was already promised by the British to the Arabs. Secretly, needless to say. So the Arabs get a promise. France and Britain divide the land between the two. France doesn't know about the promise the British made to the Arabs. You don't understand the chaos after the war will be over. And that's how the two superpowers decide to divide the Middle East. You do see the Zone A, Zone B, doesn't really matter. The Ottoman Empire, still alive and kicking. But it was obvious how the war is going to end. After the war is over, that's how this place will be divided. By the way, I want to show you this map. You see the yellow area over there? If they designed the line a little different, and all the yellow was included in the French influence that you see up there, there was no Palestine today and no Palestinians. What will create Palestine for the first time ever, the area will be disconnected from Syria. Because Palestinians, so to speak, were southern Syrians. That was their title. But now the line between the two superpowers is separating Palestine from Syria. For the first time ever, Palestine is not included in the Syrian area. That's going to create a whole confusion. And if that's not enough, the Jews get a promise as well. November 2nd, 1917, please read the document. British Empire is all for establishing a homeland for the Jews in Palestine. Are local Palestinians mentioned? No. What does it say? It says ethnic groups in Palestine. Why the British do not recognize the Palestinians as a nation? Well, they did not consider themselves as one. We speak about tribes and clans always in conflict without any national agenda or leadership. Now, this document will be embraced by the League of Nations, which means the whole world. The whole world is in the opinion that Palestine should have in it a national home for the Jewish people. Palestinians are not mentioned because they did not exist yet. And I'm sure that you all thought that Palestine and Palestinians are there from time immemorial. You're wrong. The term Palestinian is not mentioned in any document from those days. Look at Balfour himself, that was really bothered by that, because the question was, how much of Palestine is allocated to the Jewish homeland, and what kind of entity it's going to be? An autonomy, independent state, a parliamentary democracy, maybe a monarchy, wasn't clear. But you do see that Balfour himself said both sides of the Jordan River. So even Palestine to the British was not clear what are the borders of Palestine. For the British Foreign Office, these were the borders of Palestine. And since the war is over, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to run this one through with your permission, the whole world comes together to a peace conference in Paris, France. And they are going to divide the world. They're going to create nations and countries based on their principles without asking the locals if they want to be part of it. And Sir Winston Churchill, colonial secretary, sits in his hotel room in Cairo, opens the map of the Middle East with a pencil and a roller and marking lines in the desert, creating countries to people that did not understand the concept, were not interested, and did not know what on earth they are talking about. For the Arab mindset, if you divide us to nations, it's a conspiracy. We want to be one entity, all united under a caliph. That's how Islam is strong. So therefore, the whole Middle East made by the British and French is accepted by them as a conspiracy. You divide us to nations, you're weakening our position. We don't want to be divided to nations. So before the war was over, and before the Christian superpowers dividing the Middle East, there was no Iraq, there was no Jordan, there was no Syria, there was no Lebanon, there was no Israel, no Saudi Arabia, no Kuwait. These countries are the product, if you wish, of the British-French decision how to divide the Middle East so they will be able to govern it easier. For the locals, you don't understand the frustration. You're going to force us to live in a way that we're not interested, we don't even understand. And here's the new Middle East. All the countries are there, but keep in mind, that was something that the locals were not interested in or even understanding how the whole system works. Few things will happen, and that will take place in few years, basically, so we need to watch that a little carefully. The world is establishing a body that is going to be like the UN called the League of Nations. The idea came before Woodrow Wilson, the US president, although America never joined the League of Nations. The idea was, we are going to see, we are going to monitor, we are going to see that the world lives in peace, we are going to protect people's rights, etc. That was the League of Nations. And the League of Nations understood that if you want to create those states in the region for people that do not understand states, we need to teach them. And therefore, we are going to create a mandate in Palestine. We are going to teach the local Jews how to create a government, what about elections, how to have elected bodies to become a nation. We are going to do that in every area that we decided around the Middle East. And since Britain is concerned about the Suez Canal, they demand to have the mandate over Palestine. And this mandate is going to dictate the whole way of life in the region. So to some extent, Great Britain is responsible to what happens even today, based on the way that they conducted their affairs. I'm skipping this one with your permission, I'm sorry. But here's an observation of an historian, what was the way that Great Britain treated the Zionists in Palestine. Keep in mind that Britain made a promise, all right, that the land will be given to the Jews as a homeland. Not to the locals. There were no locals. That's the impression. Let me prove that to you by using the words of some British influential politicians to come. Especially the one down at the bottom. If we have to offend somebody, let's offend the Jews and not the Arabs. Because of one reason. The Arabs were the allies of Britain during WW1. We may need them in the future. And although we made the promise that Palestine will be the home for the Jewish people, we want these people to side with us because oil was found in Mosul, Iraq. The whole British Navy shifting from coal to oil. Suddenly the Middle East is becoming an asset because of oil. How interesting, until this very day. And the League of Nations writes a document, and let's read Article 6 together. That's the world. That's not a whim of the King of England. This will be a document that the whole world embraced. What does it say? Is it clear enough? I'm asking you. It's a yes or a no. And some of your eyes are open. Some are not, but some of your eyes are open. And if that's not enough, read Article 7. So the whole world has one opinion. Palestine is indeed the homeland for the Jewish people, plus protecting the rights of other groups. But there's no question about whose the land is going to be. That's a decision made by the League of Nations that represented all the nations in the world back then. That's how the British got their mandate. Few things happen as we speak. Great Britain understood that we are in a major mess. Let's see what can we do. Keep in mind the promise, the king of the Arabs, a kingdom. What about the promise here? How they're going to compensate the Arabs? So a few things will be shifting now in the British diplomacy. For example, in Palestine, they're going to find a local mufti by the name of Hajj Amin al-Husseini and give him a position. Just like we gave the Jews the right for a nation and we deal with the Jewish agency / Zionist movement, we are going to create for you national bodies as well. Just a minute now. The mandate said very clearly, it's not the locals' nation, it's a Jewish nation. But Great Britain is concerned about keeping the Arabs on the side. They create the Supreme Muslim Council, not the High Palestinian Parliament, because there's no such identity. Focus on religion. This man is going to be the main perpetrator, a mass murderer, to murder more Arabs than Jews. But I'll show you the radio broadcast he did from Germany, from Hitler's office in 1942. We'll get to that. Meanwhile, we have a lot of angry Arab princes that were promised to be kings, and the promise wasn't kept. A special conference gets together, appointing Faisal, the king of Iraq. Faisal was the son of the Sharif of Mecca, was supposed to be the king of Syria, but Syria was promised to France, and France is stronger. Faisal is simply kicked from his kingdom. Great Britain is concerned. They create a kingdom specially for Faisal. That's Iraq. There was no Iraq before there was a need to compensate a very angry Arab prince. What about the other son of the Sharif of Mecca, who's Abdullah? Well, let's create a country for him. Guess what was the country that Abdullah got? Well, a big part of Palestine. Meanwhile, the British are basically writing a statement of policy, and they speak about a Jewish immigration quota. Just a minute. The mandate said very clearly, you are going to prepare the land, and you're going to encourage more Jews to come. It's going to be an intense population. A quota? That will already contradict what the mandate said. But who cares? Britain has boots on the ground. They can do basically whatever they want. So Mr. Churchill once again decides to take a chunk from Palestine, 75% of Palestine, that were promised to the Jews as a homeland, to create a new kingdom, the Hashemite kingdom of Transjordan, that will be given to Abdullah. Now the Middle East is complete. We do have Iraq, we have Syria, we have Lebanon, we have Jordan. But think about the promise made to the Jews. From this whole country, 75% is taken. Jews are not permitted to settle on the eastern side of the Jordan. Arabs are permitted to settle on the western side. That will be the beginning of changing the whole demographics in the area that will lead later on to an open conflict. Have to stop here because I tried to keep my promise. And if you promise to be back in 7 minutes, I will dismiss you at 8 o'clock. Is that okay? Well, I was told that 8 o'clock will be the latest, and I do want to squeeze as much information as I can. I can tell you're losing me already. But it is what it is. I can recommend, if you go to the resource table, you have the full version of it, 8 hours, with all the documents. So please be back in 7, Pastor Eric, 10 minutes? 7 minutes, okay. And we'll carry on. As we say in Tools in Israel, the bus leaves on time. So we love you, but we'll leave you. Thank you. Emily. I can. Well, folks. Hey, James. Well, folks, I need to apologize, but I'm asking you to come and take your seats, please. Okay, folks, we need to carry on. This is slide 79 out of 266. That's what my screen tells me. Please, please, don't panic, don't panic. Not going all the way there. But we stopped with the world giving Britain a mandate over Palestine. And we have to understand that Great Britain could care less about the promise that was made for the Jews in any of the Balfour Declaration, etc. Britain wanted to dominate the British interests in the area, and all of the policy was dedicated to make sure the Suez Canal is ready and secure, to make sure that the oil flows from the wells of Mosul to the harbor of Haifa. That was the main purpose behind the British idea of the mandate, and not to keep the promise made to the Jews by the whole world. It's going to change everything in Palestine, including demographics. But first, we need to understand what is Palestine. Let me show you the borders of the land. In 1906, that line was marked between Great Britain and the Ottoman Empire. As I told you, the Ottomans were too close to the canal. Britain wanted all of the Sinai Peninsula to be a buffer zone. They simply forced the Ottomans back. That line is still today the border between Israel and Egypt. Little after that, Churchill decided to divide the land into two, and the eastern border was created. In 1923, the last border was created, and hallelujah, for the first time ever, there's a place called Palestine with clear borders. Until 1923, there was no such an entity. There were no such people, even now, because who lives in Palestine? Jews and Arabs and many others. We still don't have a national identity that will be called Palestinians. That will happen a little later. But for the first time ever, here is Palestine. Not in the days of the Romans, not in the days of the Crusaders. Palestine being defined. Why? Because up until then, it was always part of Syria. Now, the land is separate from Syria by the decision made by the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Remember, it ends up in British hands. Syria is in French hands. You can no longer call Palestine southern Syria because now Palestine is part of the British Empire and not part of Syria anymore. That will start to make this connection between Palestine and the local population. So now we have borders. Once and for all, a Palestine was born for the first time ever, not as an independent state, but as a land that will be under a British mandate. And even the dynamic during the British mandate over Palestine, it happened very quickly in a very bizarre way. Great Britain understood that in order to draw the Arabs on their side, they cannot be one-sided pro-Jewish as they were committed to be. And therefore, they understood that whenever the Arabs are uprising, they're unhappy with the Jewish presence in the country, Great Britain will not punish the Arabs, they will encourage the Arabs. I'll prove that to you in just a minute. At the same time, Britain has a lot of interests. They're building the country. They build a new railroad, and they build the harbor in Haifa, and who they're going to employ in those projects. If you want to employ the Jews, you pay them $100 per month. If you want to employ Arabs, you pay them $20 a month. Who would you employ? Great Britain is importing Arabs from all around the Middle East. And after the job is done, they can stay and bring their families, and these are the Palestinians of today. Egyptians and Afghans and Iraqis and Lebanese and Syrians. In 20 years, the demographics are changing because of Britain's policy. Remember the Mufti, this Arab gentleman I showed you earlier? He's the leader, and he's advised by British personnel in the country. If you are going to lead a right against the British mandate or against the Jews, we will back you up, because we want your support. There are some waves of another conflict coming. It will be called the Second World War. Britain needs the oil fields. Britain needs the Suez Canal. Britain wants happy people in Egypt. As long as you support the Jews overwhelmingly, your assets are in danger. British policy has to shift, and whenever there is some kind of unrest in the country, Great Britain is coming to investigate what went wrong. Usually they will appoint a committee to check and see what went wrong, and this committee will vote, so to speak, in favor of the Arabs, and once again, limiting Jewish immigration, limiting land purchase. That was the British mandate over Palestine for almost 30 years. They write a document called the White Paper, and this White Paper always had a new idea, what is it that we need to do regarding Palestine. Keep in mind, the whole mandate was given with one condition. You're going to allocate public land for the Jews, you're going to bring as many as possible to the country in a very short time. It becomes like Britain is creating another people that fight for the land. These will be the Palestinians against the whole idea behind the mandate. In 30 years, everything's going to change. And meanwhile, the mandate has its supervisors from the League of Nations. They tell Britain, just a minute, guys, you misunderstood something. This is wrong. You may lose Palestine unless you're going to keep your promise to the Jews. And the Prime Minister has to make a proclamation and has to send a letter almost apologizing to the Jewish leaders. Please read the letter of Ramsay MacDonald's Prime Minister. It's almost like another Balfour Declaration. We are sorry, he says. The mandatory authorities misunderstood the whole purpose. We are limiting Jewish immigration. That's wrong. We are going to go back to the promise 1931. Keep in mind that 2 years later, Hitler is going to be appointed Chancellor of Germany. It's clear what is going to happen in Europe. The Jews are beginning to be a little panicking what may happen. They want to go to the one place that will accommodate them, Palestine. It's impossible. Great Britain will not allow them in because Jews are coming, makes the Arabs upset. We want Palestine to be quiet. To some extent, Britain has to be accused for the loss of 6 million lives. It wasn't their intention. They did not know, obviously. But the fact that Palestine is no longer an option, that will be a problem. But here, a promise is made once again by the British government. Sorry, guys, we misunderstood something. We're going to be 100% behind the Jewish homeland in Palestine 1931. Great Britain never watched the borders of Palestine. They paved the railroad in 1925 from Alexandria to Gaza. Anybody could come in. They would watch the harbors. And who came through the harbors? Jews from Europe. Who came through the land borders? Everybody. Unmonitored, unwatched, without any documents, followed by the families. Demographics is going to change totally. Britain was blessed. They need cheap labor. There's a lot of work to be done. So Britain never tried to stop that immigration. Here is a report given by the governor of France on the Golan Heights. In a few months, 36,000 people never came back. 20 years later, it will be 10 times more. The demographics in Palestine are changing. And the main complaint of the Arabs was, there's no land. Each one wants to be a farmer. We want a piece of land. Well, how come there was no land? Not because of Jewish immigration. Because Jews came to improve the land, to develop the land, and all the land was taken by those illegal infiltrators that came from all around to take the land that was acquired and was developed by Jewish money. For example, since that was the main complaint, the US also sent a committee to check and see how much available land is there in Palestine. Take 2 minutes, please, and read the highlighted in yellow. Not Jewish, not my opinion. It was a committee sent by the US government. Is there enough land in Palestine? What say you? Quite enough, right? So once again, you see that it was the British policy that changed everything in the area. The Arabs are still not happy because MacDonald wrote his letter and Jews kept coming, and they decided to go to a full-scale revolt against the British, started in 1936. It will be called the Arab Revolt. Great Britain is taken by surprise. They do not understand. We are on your side. We are supporting you constantly. Yes, but Mr. MacDonald promised the Jews once again the Jews could come. We are very unhappy. I'm sorry to say, terror sometimes wins. You know what? Terror almost always wins. if you don't fight it. And the Arabs understood, Britain is interested in our friendship. We can do almost whatever we want. They just stepped over the line in this revolt. Great Britain has to respond. They're losing control. British troops are preparing to the war in Europe. Who the British are going to ask to help them? The Jews. The Jews built a militia called the Haganah in 1920 to protect Jewish lives and property. Great Britain needs now the Jewish militia. It was a blessing for the Jewish side because they had decent training, a chain of command, decent equipment. They will make all the difference in 10 years when Israel will fight for its independence, while the backbone of the Arabs will be crushed by the British completely. But the borders were still open. And lots of infiltrators came from Syria to fight against the British. Keep in mind, you're coming from French territory. The French couldn't care less. They wanted trouble on the British side. So people that go from Syria into Palestine to fight the British, you do that with French blessing. I know it sounds ridiculous, but these two were not good friends. And before not too long, they turned against each other. And there's a whole civil war. More Arabs were murdered by Arabs than by the British army. And the money came from Nazi Germany. They have every interest in the world to make sure that there will be chaos in British territory. But meanwhile, something else happens, and that will be an understanding that something has to be done, and I want to run this by with your permission. Great Britain understands there is a problem, we are not controlling things anymore, let's try to find a solution. They send over a commission. That commission will come to Palestine in the end of 1936, and they have a mission. We're going to meet with Jewish leaders, they're going to meet with Arab leaders, we'll try to get some kind of a conference if possible, and we'll see what can be done. The Arabs refuse to appear. We are not negotiating, they say. The land is Muslim. Jews have no rights in it. We don't care about what you decide. The Jewish team is placing its complaints to the British Commission. And after a while, this commission has to come to the conclusion, basically, that Great Britain totally violated its own obligation to the Jewish people. But now it's too late. What can you do? Can you deport all the Arabs? You really cannot. So what will be a possible solution to bring some peace to the region? Well, they come with the idea of partition. I'm going to run this one with your permission through and look at the map that you see in front of you. For the first time ever, the world is officially recognizing a Jewish state and a Palestinian state. Keep in mind, there is no thing called Palestinian people. They don't have authority, leadership, absolutely nothing. But Great Britain decides that the only way to end peacefully, they're going to divide the land called Palestine into two. There will be a Jewish state, there will be an Arab state, and Britain will keep quite a big chunk of it, Jerusalem, Bethlehem, and an access to the harbor of Jaffa. That's the idea. The Jewish side said, just a minute now. First, you promised us all of Palestine. Then you took 75% away, gave it to Abdullah to create the Hashemite kingdom. That's what you offer? Go to the book of the mandate. It said very clearly, whose land is it? The Arabs are not even negotiating. This land is Muslim, Arab, the Jews have no rights in it. But it's important to read some of the observations of the Peel Commission. I'll give you a minute, with your permission, to read the highlighted area. And that's not my crazy ideas. We speak about an official document published by the British Empire. I love the one in blue. The national home cannot be half national. Is that clear enough? Okay. What about this one? In other words, we, the British, really messed up everything. We had an obligation. We did not understand it. We're fighting for British interests. We totally betrayed the Jewish side. It's too late now to correct anything. All we can do is to think about partition, to try to divide the land into two. It wasn't working, but it set some kind of a mind that maybe that's a possible solution. Maybe in the future, we'll speak about partition. These two people will never live peacefully together. The differences are too big. The hatred is too big. The envy is unbridgeable. So the world is willing to accept the idea of partition. First time ever that the world offers two states. Even today we speak about a two-state solution. Well, here is a two-state solution. One party said, we'll hate the plan, but we'll take it, the Jewish side. Other party said, no way. The Jews have no rights whatsoever. We're not negotiating about anything. 2 years later, the war is about to begin. British Empire officially is withdrawing from the Balfour Declaration. I'm paraphrasing, but Malcolm MacDonald, the 17th of May, 1939, said officially, Balfour was an idiot. He didn't use the term idiot. He gave a proclamation of total ignorance. He did not understand what's going on. We look at the country. There was a majority of Arabs. How can we make a promise to the Jews? Yes, but this majority of Arabs happened because the British invited them to come from every corner of the Middle East. They changed the demographics completely. And therefore, Great Britain is no longer committed to any Jewish homeland in Palestine. That's how the Second World War begins in that part of the world. Let me give you an observation, an opinion of mine. Take it or leave it. You go to Genesis 12, verse 3. I'll bless those who bless you. You all know the verse. Until that document, until the Second World War, Great Britain was one of the biggest empires in history ever. They pulled back from the promise. They lost the empire. Because after the war was over, Britain won, but lost the empire. Maybe there was a lesson here for the British to learn. Did they? I don't think so, based on what we see today in British diplomacy. But that would be a great lesson to learn. You're not learning much from history, huh? Well, here is one. So the war started, the war was over, and not much happened in Palestine during those years, with one exception. If Great Britain was hoping to draw the Arabs on their side, the Arabs took the German side without any hesitation. The Jews in Palestine, 40,000 of them, volunteered to the British Army. It was a blessing. They will come back home with combat experience. The motivation was sky high. When Israel will fight for its independence, we had an advantage. Because the Arabs were crushed in the big revolt of 1936 to 1939, the Arabs had no motivation. I'll show you a quote. How can people fight for the nation when they do not understand the concept? So we do speak about a turning point once again, and let's bring that chapter to conclusion. That will be the outcomes of the British mandate. Great Britain knew extremely well the Jews will not support Nazi Germany, and therefore we have them for granted on our side. We don't know about the Arabs. So if you're going to support them, maybe they'll support us during the war. Never happened. So in the Second World War, Palestine was a place that was relatively quiet. As I said earlier, the Arabs refused to join the British. By the way, they fought with the Ottomans against the British, most of them. Some of you have seen the movie Lawrence of Arabia. That's what it speaks about, the First World War and the efforts to recruit Arabs to fight with the British. That was in vain as well. And meanwhile, the Grand Mufti had to flee in 1937, invited by Hitler to Berlin, and that will be almost a daily message, broadcasted either from Rome or from Berlin. This one is easy to read. How about this one? Very unpleasant, as you understand. That's the tone until this very day. That was official policy of the Arabs in Palestine, represented by the Mufti, never elected by anybody, by the way, appointed by the British. Read the tone, understand the message. Few things did not change until this very day. And after the war is over, Great Britain is coming to the conclusion, Palestine is a major problem. We don't want to deal with it anymore. 90,000 troops are deployed in Palestine. The empire is exhausted. There's no money, no manpower. They decide to leave Palestine. In 1947, they're leaving India. They will leave Ceylon or Sri Lanka, and Palestine, the empire is shrinking. And back to Aaron's Bavin, we started with this one. That was his observation about the British mandate, about the population of the Arabs in Palestine. They don't care about a state. All they fight for is that the Jews will not have a state. You know what? Amen to that. That's the case until this very day. We have to understand that, and I'll prove it to you if I didn't so far. The UN is standing up to the challenge. They send over a committee, and this committee arrives to Palestine, UNSCOP, United Nations Special Committee on Palestine, 11 members, and they are on a mission. The UN was just born April 1st of 1945 in San Francisco. Headquarters moved to New York. This is the first big issue for the UN to deal with. What can be done in Palestine? And the UN, as always, they try to interview Jewish leaders, Arab leaders. Guess who comes to the meeting room? The Jewish side. After losing 6 million Jews in the Second World War, whatever the world was willing to offer as a Jewish state, we cannot turn down. The Arab Party, the same old song. We are not negotiating. The land is Arab. The Jews have no rights in it. We don't care what the UN decides. Israel will never be born. There won't be a homeland for the Jews in the land of Palestine. And the party, the team of 11, is quite confused. 2 members, by the way, were Muslims, one from Iran, one from India. And the Indian delegate is whispering to David Ben-Gurion, the Jewish leader, and said, listen, we understand. We also want to get rid of Britain. We are on the same side. But if I support a Jewish state, I'll have to deal with 300 million Muslims in India that will create a lot of havoc inside India. I have to vote against. So it's not what's right and what's wrong. Every country has its own agendas, and that was the India's policy. But fortunately, he was not a majority. So after meeting leaders all around the country, the Arab organizations or the Arab whatever unions ordered people in the Arab villages when the team came to visit to have the kids out in the streets throwing rotten tomatoes and potatoes on the delegation, showing them that they are not welcome by the Arabs. The team is going back home, and they decide that partition is the only possible option to end that war. Britain is going home. The terminate of the mandate will be August 1st of 1948. We hope that we can end it peacefully. Come to the table. Let's find a solution. And here is a map that they presented. The map will be called the Partition Plan. It will be accepted by the UN as Resolution 181, November 29th of 1947. Hallelujah. 2 countries are born once again. One for the Jews and one for the Arabs. You want a 2-state solution? Here is a 2-state solution. The whole world speaks about a 2-state solution. By the way, the Arabs reject it completely. They don't want a 2-state solution. Listen to their messages. I'm not making up stuff. But here is the world's idea. We're going to divide the land into 2. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, a small enclave that will be governed by a certain tribunal. Some of the land will be Jewish, 55%, 45% will be Arab. It looks like it's a reasonable plan to live with. What say you? Well, the Jewish part, of course, accepted it. The Arab part totally denied that. And that's what will lead in a few weeks to what will be called the War of Israel's Independence, or if you wish, the Nakba. They're going to commemorate that this Friday. May 15th is a major day in the Muslim world, the Arab world, demonstrations, rallies. I bet you universities in your country are going also to commemorate this day, okay, the day that the Arabs basically lost the war. We go by the Jewish calendar. So in 1948, it was indeed May 14, May 15. But it changes every year because we go by the Jewish calendar, so it's not always May. We have our own way of counting time. So that's the response. We do not accept the plan. The Arab armies around Israel are preparing to invade the country. Israel is not yet. The Jewish militia, the Haganah, is defeating the local Arab militias in the country. They don't have a chain of command. They don't have any national agenda. They do not understand the principle. Many flee to become refugees later on, without even qualifying to be called refugees. I'll prove that to you in a few minutes. And then the Arab armies, the mighty Arab armies are preparing, and these are the statements which are made by the Arab leaders as they're gathering on the borders of the Jewish state. Keep in mind, Great Britain is still in the land, which means the Arab armies cannot invade yet until the mandate officially terminates. Here's the message. Now think about a nation that only 3 years earlier suffered the Holocaust, and they speak once again about a complete annihilation of the Jews in Palestine. You do understand the tone. You do understand the intent of the other side. And read this one. So they were not joking. That was the attention, basically. That was the intention, is to completely wipe out Jewish presence from Palestine. The big day arrives. A short video for you.
וכך הגיע יום 14 במאי.
We don't need a volume, thank you.
ב8 בבוקר סקר הנציב העליון, סר אלן קנינגהם, את משמר הכבוד בארמון הנציב בירושלים.
His headquarters in Jerusalem, gets on a plane and flies to Haifa Harbor.
הוא נכנס אל מכונית השרד השחורה שלו, ועמדה להסיעו לשדה התעופה בעטרות, משם ימריא לחיפה. בנמל חיפה שוב סקר הנציב העליון משמר כבוד כשרק מעטים צופים בטקס.
Had to be done before Shabbat begins because some of the members of the provisional government were religious Jews. And they said, if you don't sign...
אחרון הנציבים יצא עכשיו בסירת מנוע אל אוניית המלחמה שעל סיפונה יישא עד חצות הלילה. אז ייתמו 30 שנות בריטניה.
Let's bring the British mandate to conclusion and see what happened in Palestine. Well, number one, the numbers of people, as you understand, the numbers are over there. Those Jews that came not only legally. Each one was monitored and had to have a certificate and had a special permission, while most of the Arabs were brought by the British as workers. They stayed in Palestine to become the Palestinian nation. People that live in a country indigenous for thousands of years. Yes, I'm being sarcastic. Most of them came from Egypt and Syria and Lebanon. They had no connection to the land and other families. Some came by themselves, leaving the family behind, going home for the season and come back to work. How on earth people can call these people illegal workers as the indigenous people of Palestine? But that's what the world does. So I hope that you begin to understand there's more to the story. For example, you see about the growth of population. The anti-Israeli claim will say that because of the British mandate, conditions improved so much that the Arabs had more babies, more kids, bigger families, not immigration. All of them are the local population. Here is the statistic for you. Egypt, the most fast-growing population in the Arab world, only grew with 105%. Look at Palestine. By the way, there was a mandate over Jordan. Was the population growing in Jordan? 0. A mandate over Syria, population wasn't growing. It was only growing in the Jewish area. Because of the blessing of the Jews to the land and because of British policy to invite more people to come in to change demographics. That was the policy to begin with. Please read the words of Malcolm MacDonald, not a friend of Israel, to understand. All right, another one that really nailed it. Okay? Next one, I'm going to teach you some Latin. Some of you may know it. But there is a rule, all right, which was integrated in international law. Uti possidetis iuris, that says the following, and this is not a nuance, all right? If the world gave a mandate to a certain country to help build a nation, the borders of the mandate will be the borders of the state that will be born, promised to that nation. The mandate gave the land of Palestine to the Jews. And therefore, the borders of Palestine should be a Jewish state. Because today, when Israel occupies or liberated Judea and Samaria, the West Bank or the Gaza Strip, by that rule, it should be Israeli territory. Because that was the land called Palestine that the world gave Britain as a mandate to give as a homeland to the Jews. So just by law, not by sentiments, not by opinions, not by observations, the land of Palestine, as defined by the League of Nations, was given to the Jews, all right, as a homeland. These should be the borders of that land. Which means if Jews are settling or building towns in Judea and Samaria, that's not illegal settlements, because the land was given to them by international law. Yes, it's debatable. Not everybody agrees, but this is a principle, all right, in international law. And you can debate that, many people do. But the principle is there. And since now there is a Jewish state and Israel is becoming a state, question should be, what about the other one? The world spoke about two countries, right? One for the Jews and one for the Arabs. There is a war going on, and here is what happens in the Arab countries. Meanwhile, here is Hassan al-Banna, the founder of, there are 1 million Jews that live in Arab countries. So if you, the Jews, will dare to proclaim your independence, we are going to lead the Jews in our country to the sea. Now this is important, because it always says, we don't have a problem with the Jews, it's only the Zionists. Well, just a minute now, you're targeting the Jews in your country as a legitimate enemy, a legitimate casualties, if you wish, of war. That's not the Zionist movement. These are Jews who live in Egypt from the days of Jeremiah, long before Islam was born. There was a community in Babylon, Baghdad and Babylon, from the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, long before Islam was even born. And these are considered aliens. We're going to chase you into the ocean. We're going to kill you, basically. So you do understand it wasn't just the state of Israel that was founded, it was the whole Jewish world in the area that's going to suffer from that partition plan. I want to show you another short video. Every kid in my country knows that by heart. Let's see if it works. I need the volume, please.
Egypt, no. Soviet Union, yes. United Kingdom, abstain. United States, yes. Yugoslavia, abstain.
Resolution of the Dutch Committee for Palestine was adopted by 33 votes, 13 against, 10 abstained.
Aren't you happy? It looks like common sense prevailed. The world is happy. A two-state solution. Let's look into the balance of powers and understand how this will develop. As I said, and I have to be quick to admit, the Jewish population outnumbered had a big advantage. The advantage was, number one, motivation. It was sky high. An opportunity once in 2,000 years to build a nation once again, a home for Holocaust survivors, for the Jewish people. Everything was ready for statehood. There was a government, there was a parliament, institutions. It was indeed a state just waiting for the opportunity to be proclaimed a state. On the other side, none of the above. Great Britain was hoping to create two parliamentary democracies. Well, they were right in just one case, the Jewish case. The Arab side did not have any institutions that can represent the nation. They were not prepared for that. There was no leadership. The leadership was crushed by the British about 10 years earlier. The Jewish side, although outnumbered, had an advantage. And let me show you the words of an Arab activist asking with so much frustration the following question. You do understand the problem. If you live in Jaffa and you came 2 years earlier from Egypt just to work, how are you connected to the land? What is your motivation to risk your lives in order to protect a land that is not really yours? You only came recently, your family is still back home in Egypt, and this will be most of Palestinians in the country. So you do understand that speaking about who had the chances to win the war, it was indeed the Jewish side. So to speak about a national existence, not yet. The Palestinian people will be born under unusual circumstances in refugee camps in Gaza and the West Bank, in Lebanon and Syria, not before that. You read newspapers from the days, you don't read about Palestinians. You speak about Arabs who live in Palestine. That was the case. There could be Egyptian, and could be Syrians and Lebanese. It's not two nations fighting for the land yet. It's one nation that came back home. Yes, I'm a little biased now. And it's a lot of people that live in Palestine without any connection to one another, without any national structure, without anything to connect them to the land, except for a good job they found a few years earlier. Hallelujah, there is a Jewish state now. State of Israel was born May 14, and here is a declaration by David Ben-Gurion. Let me show you this one. As he was reading the Proclamation of Independence, the Egyptian Air Force is bombing the building and bombing Tel Aviv as well. The second part of the war started. A little anecdote, if I may. There was not much time. I had to do everything with much haste. So they signed a piece of paper that was blank. I mean, they were not able to sign or to write the Proclamation of Independence from right to left Hebrew, right? On that piece of paper. So they signed it, a blank paper. And they only added the text about a year later. So we had the Proclamation of Independence with nothing in it. And by the way, the word democracy is not mentioned in it even once. Because democracy, we don't have a word in Hebrew for democracy. All right? It's a foreign word. And Ben-Gurion insisted in our Proclamation of Independence, everything will be in Hebrew, pure Hebrew. And since there's no word in Hebrew for democracy, the term democracy doesn't even appear in our Proclamation of Independence. We don't have a constitution. This is the closest that we have to a constitution. People celebrate, people are happy. We bring that to conclusion in 5 minutes. I don't have enough time to show you this. Well, we saw this map earlier. We spoke about the partition plan. Israel is divided into two. I want to draw your attention to the map on the left-hand side. All that brownish area, there is green in brown. Can you all see that? All the brownish area was conquered by the Israeli militia even before the state was proclaimed. After the state proclaimed, the Arab armies are invading, and that's how the war comes to an end. Here is the new state of Israel. It's critical to understand the following. You do see that there is a brown area that sinks into the yellow, a brown area coming from south into the yellow. It is true that some of the land that was allocated to the Palestinians was conquered by the state of Israel, not all of it. The brownish areas were still promised to the Palestinians, but these were in the hands of the Arabs. You see, the king of Jordan, King Abdullah, came from Jordan seemingly to help his brothers and sisters. And after the war was over, his army was deployed in the brown area. That's the West Bank. And after the war was over, he refused to withdraw. He was supposed to pull back. He was supposed to call the Palestinian leadership. There wasn't such leadership. And tell them, listen, that's the land the world gave you. Build your country. He decided to stay and to annex the area. The Egyptians did the same. Egypt had a king, by the way, back then, King Farouk. The Egyptian army, supposed to pull out from the Gaza area, they decided to stay. And therefore, the Palestinian state wasn't born, not because of Israel. This is an important fact. They could easily establish their country. Some of the land given to them was in the hands of the Arabs. The Arabs refused to hand over the land so they can celebrate their independence. So the reason why there was no Palestine today is because the king of Jordan and the Egyptian stole Palestinian land. And for that reason, there is no Palestine. I'm sure that many of you did not know these facts, but they're basic facts. Because if I'd asked you a minute ago why there is no Palestine, your answer will be, most of you, because you, the Jews, conquered the land. Wrong. Nonsense, forgive me. They had enough land to proclaim a state. But the king of Jordan liked the West Bank. His kingdom is a desert. And said, you know what, I'm staying. The Egyptians enjoyed the area of Gaza. The beaches are nice. We are staying. And therefore, Palestine wasn't born, not because of Israel. The land allocated to them was taken by the Arab countries. I don't want to start a new subject because it will take some time, but tomorrow we're going to speak about a very unpleasant issue, which will be the refugees. Did you hear about Jewish refugees, by the way? What about Jewish refugees? You don't hear about them. When you hear the term refugees, Middle East, one thing comes to mind, Palestinian refugees. For 80 years, Palestinian refugees. It's interesting. The only place in the world that a refugee can inherit his position to his children are the Palestinian refugees. Never happened in world history. A refugee is a definition. You do not carry that title for good. You settle in another land, you get your citizenship. Once you're a citizen, you stop being a refugee. Not with the Palestinians. So the United Nations created a certain forum just to deal with Palestinian refugees. Keep in mind, 1948. 3 years earlier, millions of refugees are walking through the European continent, totally desperate, totally hopeless, trying to find home. In a few years, problem was settled. The Marshall Plan, countries took people in, gave them chance, gave them new life, not when it comes to the Palestinians. It's a tragedy. For 78 years, millions of people are refugees. Not because there are no solutions. Nobody wants to solve the problem. Even today, if anybody wants to leave Gaza to go to Egypt, he's not welcome. Arab countries refuse to take in Palestinian refugees. The reasons are clear. I'll share that with you tomorrow if you should choose to come tomorrow evening. Thank you so much. I try to be more disciplined. It's 8 o'clock sharp, okay? And again, I'm here to chat if anybody is interested, by all means. And once again, something that I said may bother you, please go and check. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you tomorrow if you have better facts to present to what I presented. Thank you.
Wasn't that just like listening to CNN? It is. I am always amazed when I listen to Ronny how much information we receive that is absolutely false. And I always tell people, I said, if you want to see the truth in action, you need to go to Israel. And when you go there, your eyes are just absolutely opened. And so I appreciate Ronny. He's an incredible wealth of knowledge. If you think he knows a lot about this, you ought to go to Israel and listen to what he shares about Scripture and about how God's word ties into our lives today. And so it's just such a great thing. I appreciate him being here tonight. He'll be here tomorrow night. He was up in my buddy's church up in North Carolina. He said night 2 is great. He said, it was just such a wonderful experience. So I appreciate Ronny being here, and Tally in the back. Appreciate her being here as well. So I'm going to close this in a word of prayer. Y'all, if you're interested in taking a look at his books and some of the things they have, I'd love for you to do that. Otherwise, I really do. I hope you'll come back again tomorrow night. It's 1948 to the present, and so it's amazing how much information he can squeeze in there. So, and by the way, we have recorded this. So in a couple of days, we'll be putting that on. So I'm sure that you'll want to go back and take a look and see all the stuff that you've forgotten. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for a good night. God, I thank you for Ronny and his family. God, we pray that you will bless them, and I pray that your hand will be upon them. Lord, I pray that you'll give us wisdom as Christians, and may you bless and bring peace to your land and to your people. And I pray these things in Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys.